Hey guys, and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be doing something just a little bit different because we're going to be starting Project Bromad. So you guys might be asking, what in the world is a Bromad? Well, a Bromad is when you take a Bronson, you add some aftermarket parts, and then it's going to be similar geometry and all that fun stuff as a Nomad. And then you guys might also be asking, Austin, why in the world don't you just buy a Nomad instead of altering this already beautiful, amazing bike and make it a Nomad? Well, the reason for that is that I have no clue who in the world picks the colors for these newer Santa Cruz bikes. They look like... That is probably the #1 reason why I'm altering this bike to ride like that bike, but actually look good. I'm taking the most beautiful color that Santa Cruz has ever released and actually making a bike that's like the Nomad, but actually looks good. And then secondly, I already have this bike, and so I might as well just spend like $400 more just to make this bike bigger instead of paying whatever outrageous price that some of the Santa Cruz frames cost. Aside from that, you can't even get a Santa Cruz frame and C, which is the carbon, the lowest end carbon. You have to buy the CC, which makes it even more expensive. So this seems like my next best option. So to achieve this, we are going to be using a link from Cascade Components. It's going to increase my rear travel to 170 millimeters. And you're not just limited to increasing to 170 millimeters. You can also increase from 150 to 160, 150 to 170 like I'm going to do. And then you could also, if you're feeling really fancy and want an outrageously big bike, you can increase your shock stroke to from 60 millimeters to 65 millimeters. And you can then get 180 millimeters in the rear, which is just insane. But if you wanted a downhill bike, essentially, if you really want to turn your Bronson into a downhill bike, which I wouldn't do, but maybe somebody else would, you can. That is an option. Throw a dual crown fork on this thing. I don't even know. Do whatever you want. I'm going to make it 170 millimeters so I can at least get somewhat close to the geometry of a Nomad. Another thing that I have to do is increase the fork travel, because obviously the Santa Cruz Bronson runs 160 millimeters of travel on the fork. Thankfully, I future-proofed this bike, and I threw a Fox 38 on this bike already. So all I needed to do was get 170 millimeters for the fork, 170 millimeter air spring for the fork. Makes it so much easier because now I don't need a new fork to turn this thing into a bigger bike. You could probably get away with running 170 millimeters on the stock fork, but it's going to start flexing. Usually around that 170 millimeter mark, you want to increase your stanchions unless you're maybe super light rider, and you might be able to get away with the 36 millimeter stanchions. So that's what I'm going to do to make this thing a Nomad. I'm going to stop talking, and we are going to get straight into the montage. Just a little heads up. So this is by no means an installation video. I'm not showing you guys how to install this link because one, it's so straightforward, and two, Cascade has an amazing video on how to install this. I'll link it down in the description below for you guys to follow if you guys do end up going with this setup. But most of you guys are here probably don't care as much about the install. What you guys are probably here for is to see how it rides, how the Bronson gets along with the Link, and the 10 millimeters increase in travel in the front, and maybe how it rides compared to a Nomad. So yeah, we're going to continue with the montage. Hold on tight, guys, because we're going to be getting to the first impressions ride pretty quick here. And you guys get to see how I like the setup for the first time. So let's keep going in the install. All right, well, let's find out if this bike even feels good. Project Bromad, first ride. Some work done the suspension. Here we go. Whoa, that is really loose now. Okay, so that did not feel as expected. It felt very harsh, but it could also be that I was kind of stiff. I kind of went down a gnarly trail as my first run of the day, so I might see how it feels on the second run, and then if it doesn't feel good, I'm gonna do some adjustments to see how I can get this to feel. Go do it.
So this next test wasn't planned, but one of my buddies had the idea of taking me to one of the largest drops on the mountain to then proceed to try to hit it. This is one of those things I've been wanting to tick off the list for a while now, and with this extra travel comes added confidence. I wasn't sure if I was going to hit it, as I've been looking at hitting this thing for the last 6 months or so. I had run-in after run-in after run-in, till I told myself to put on my big boy pants and just commit to the damn thing.
I'm already here, I want to do it, so maybe this is it. I'm not saying anything. If I'm doing it or not, I'm not saying anything. But this is what's gotten me the most every single time I've ever done a feature, is not being able to see anything until like right there. Okay, I think I got it. Got it. Got it. Woo! Yeah! Yes, sir! Okay, so I just did a couple of adjustments to the bike. Added some high-speed rebound to the fork. I think I added 15 pounds increase in the rear for the spring rate. I feel like I might be riding a little bit low in the travel, and so I'm gonna see how this feels, because it did not feel very good on my first lap.
Okay, so that lap felt a lot better, increasing the spring rate. I think what was going on was all this time I thought I needed to decrease my spring rate, but what that was doing was it was making the bike ride low in its travel, which means it was going to hit that hard ramp up that the Cascade link has to offer, and make the ride just overwhelming and hard to control. So adding spring rate helped it stay in the nice, supple part of the link's curve. So I added 10 more pounds to see how that felt.
Changed the spring rate, some other stuff on this. Felt a lot better last lap. Straight into All right, that run felt rough, but actually really good. I think I'm headed in the right direction. Added rebound to the fork, added pounds to the spring with the spring deck, so it's feeling so much better. I'm probably gonna do a couple more tweaks and then we'll do another run and see how that goes. All right, I subtracted a fast, you hear that? A fast of rebound. I hate suspension terms sometimes. All right, well, we're gonna go test it. And I also added 5 pounds to the spring. So I'm gonna go down the click I put in here and then just leave it at what it was. Oh, that turn is hard. It's a pretty well-known trail. All right, I'm gonna adjust the fork pressure. More suspension testing on the same trail. So we actually get good, we can see what our results are. Now for that good, juicy information that you guys have been all wanting to hear about. Let's go talk about it. Okay, so you guys might be asking, what are my initial thoughts on the first ride? Well, I'm going to break it up into a couple parts, and we'll talk about them each one by one. So we're going to start with the initial ride. What did I think of how it rode on the first lap of the day? Well, it started off kind of rough. So I started off with a warm-up lap that was probably not a warm-up lap. Okay, it absolutely was not a warm-up lap. I was confident I'd be totally fine. But, you know, it was kind of rough, and I was really stiff. But I did feel a couple of things on that first lap that I wanted to tell you guys about. So firstly was how rough the ride was. It was, like, really rough. Bruh. And it was mostly in the rear end, to be expected since I am running a aftermarket link. So I ended up figuring out what was making the rear feel so damn harsh. Basically what was going on with the two different setups, because the suspension was set up 100% the exact same as my old Bronson with the just a stock Santa Cruz link. So I think what the deal was, as you guys heard earlier in the video, that I was talking about how the rear end was really deep in its travel, and what I did was, instead of decreasing the spring rate thinking that that will make it less harsh, I actually increased it, going from, I think it was 390 pounds to 430, which made a huge difference, and I'll tell you guys why. What the deal was that I had the sag way too low, and it wasn't that I had it way too low on my previous setup. It was that the new link changes the suspension curve. So basically what the link does is it is really soft off the top, and then it ends with a really harsh or a big ramp up. It's a 36% ramp up, going from, I think it was 27 on the stock Bronson. So that's a big increase. And so what the deal was is that since it was lighter off the top, I was sitting lower in the sag than I would on the stock link, which would 100% make sense to me why it would feel so much harsher having more travel. So it was sitting a lot lower in its travel, so bumping up that spring rate really got it way higher in the travel, which means I was riding in that smoother part of the travel, which is key when you want the bike to feel nice and supple and tracked. Now we'll talk about what I did to the suspension. I mean, when you turn the knobs, high speed, low speed, compression, and rebound on both the shock and fork. So what I did to the shock was not much. It was pretty much set up the way I want it right off the bat. But what I did was I increased, or actually, I decreased the high speed rebound, which really helped with keeping the rear end tracked. And the reason that I decreased it from last time is because I think what I was trying to do was offset the spring rate being really low and packing up with the rebound. So I sped it up when I had the old setup, and so I was able to slow it back down. And now that my spring rate was a lot more closer to what it's supposed to be, so that really helped with getting the back tracked. It was surprisingly made a bigger difference than I would have expected. So now we'll talk about the fork settings. The fork wasn't too far off because, you know, it's a fork. I only increased it to 170 millimeters of travel. The geometry almost doesn't change other than the head tube angle. So basically what I did with that was I messed around a little bit with the compression. Didn't really do anything. I decreased the PSI in the fork about 3 PSI, which made a pretty good difference in how it tracked. And then, funny enough, I actually sped up the rebound on the fork because I thought that it was actually really low in the travel. And again, same problem as the rear linkage. It was starting to pack up and would get to that harsher part of the travel, which is no good in any circumstance. That's about all I did with the suspension. You know, you can only do so much in one ride, so it feels so much better than it did the previous ride, so I'm really pumped on that. And so now I'll just say my overall thoughts on the link itself. Did I feel the 170 mils in the back and front? I'm going to be honest here. It's really hard for me to determine what I thought did what. There was just so much going on, and I only had so much limited time, so I kind of was all over the place, trying to get the bike to feel better, because it just felt horrible on the first lap. So, in the rear, it tracks extremely well, as does the front, and I can't really say if it's the travel increase. It probably is, considering that my Bronson rode pretty good before. It rides really well now compared to what it rode before. I feel like I was riding a rattle box before compared to what it's now. and I think a lot of it's due to the link. The link seemed really, really soft off the top, and again had that harsh ramp up. I didn't bottom out. Even on that really gnarly drop, it did not bottom out. And honestly, I think it's due to the increase in travel. I did bottom out the fork then, but doing some changing the different settings really helped with getting the fork to feel better and not bottom out quite as easy. This is really early on. I can't really say too much. I need to get more riding on this, but honestly, I really enjoy this link just on that one ride, plus a couple laps that I did at the ranch. Cornering, I have some really tight corners at our property that I was able to ride that I made that have some super tight corners on them, and I really did feel that 6mm chainstay increase. If I haven't mentioned it already, the link increases the rear chainstays by 6mm on the Bronson specifically. And where you're really going to feel that is in the high-speed chunk. You're really going to feel the stability. I can't really say too much if it really made that big of a difference in the chunk, but in the corners, when it gets really tight, I can definitely feel it slightly, but it really isn't that bad. I can feel it get hung up just a hair more. Again, not that bad, not really something I would consider a big downside. And then what you guys were probably all asking, how is the climbing performance? Well, the climbing performance was surprisingly well. I'm just going to be 100% blunt and honest here. I didn't feel any difference. And that's really saying something because I did quite a bit of riding that day. I ended up doing 7 laps at our local trails. And that adds up to be 5,500 feet elevation and a little over 25 miles. And so I've had plenty of climbing on this thing, and honestly, it really doesn't feel that much different, which is a huge upside because that means that you guys get to ride a nicer bike with more travel, and it doesn't even affect climbing. So I'm just going to leave it there. I really don't have that much, I don't have enough time to really say too much about the link. If you guys are interested in seeing a long-term review on this link and setup that I have on the Bronson, be sure to hit that subscribe button down below so you guys are aware when I do end up posting a long-term review on this this product, plus how I have the Bronson set up as the Bromad. So if you guys want to see more on this, yeah, please hit that subscribe button. And if you guys did enjoy this video, if this was helpful in deciding if you wanted to do this setup for yourself, please hit that like button down below. It really helps me out. I put a lot of work into this video, and it would be greatly appreciated. And remember, guys, full send or no send.